So what we're going to do now is we're going to hook up the web API to our identity server. So underneath downloads, where I had my master here, I can pull in under quick starts my combined, and there should be an API in here which I can just pull this out. And I'll go ahead and open up a new folder in here. Under clients. And I'm going to make a new folder here called Allie.Chat.WebAPI. And I'll bring this in. Now we'll add in an existing project here from the back end, clients, Web API. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this Allie.Chat.WebAPI. Like that. And then if I look at the namespaces, we're going to just change everywhere that is API to Allie.Chat.WebAPI. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is underneath configuration. The first thing is that looks like I'm adding MVC core here. So the first thing I want to add in is a cookies policy, services.configure a cookie policy options. And in this I want to say options.check consent needed equals, and we'll point the context to be true. And then options.minimum site safe policy equals none. Hey remote, new project. Yeah, we're making a front end for Allie.Chat, which is the bot that's running in the chat. The next one is I want to add a cores. So services.add cores. And it's going to be a new policy called cores policy. And in this I want to say builder dot allow any method with any header with any origin, and I don't need that one. We want to say allow credentials with origins coming from the globals dot web app URL. Actually, this goes under add MVC core. And I just want to do this for MVC. And I'll add my compatibility. And then here's my bearer policy. And this is going to be my globals.IdentityServer URL. And my API name is phs.allie.chat.webapi, right? And instead of using JWT, we want to use add server, identity server authorization. And underneath my config, this is called Allie.Chat.WebAPI. Oh, this is the client ID. Allie.Chat API. So this one comes out of IdentityServer4. Called install package IdentityServer4.access token validation. We don't need this CORS policy. And then down here, we want to say app.useCookie policy, app.useAuthentication, app.useCORS called CORS policy, and use MVC with some routes. Is there anything else we need to do on this one? Just a second, let me think. I think that's pretty good here, right? We have an identity controller, which I don't need. One thing I want to add in here is a attributes, and I want to add a new attribute here called a claim requirement attribute. And this is going to be a type filter attribute. And I want to have a constructor with a string claim type, string claim value, which comes from a base of a type of, and it's a claim requirement filter. Like that. And we're going to say arguments is equal to a new object, which is a new claim of my claim type and claim value. And then below, we're going to have another class here called a claim requirement filter, which is a Authorization Filter. And on this, I want to do a private read-only here called claim called claim. And in my constructor, I want to have a claim. And then on authorization, with an authorization filter context called context, I want to say var has claim equals context.http context.user claims.any s, where my s.type is equal to my claim.type, and my c.value is equal to claim.value. So now, if I don't have that claim, then we're going to do a context.result is equal to a forbid result. So now when I put a new class in here called base controller, which is a controller, and it's a API. Well, let me do this a different way. We'll add a new controller here, MVC empty. No, I don't want an empty one. With read-write actions, and I'm going to say that this is a base controller. And in this one now, I can probably scrap about everything. And I'm just going to have an example of how to do this. So a public I action result here called get resource. And we'll just return OK. And I want to do this as an HTTP GET. And I also want to have this as a claim requirement called my claim types.permission and can read resource. And it wants a claim type here. So I could just say that this is a permission, like that. Okay? So we have two things to do. On my seed data here, we can get rid of these two users. And let me open this one up. Just a second here. And in this one, I want to have a new well, the first thing is we get the 3 context types, then we get my user manager. Okay, one thing I want to add in here is you can do a, so you're already doing the migrate here. And I'm going to do a var admin equals my user manager. Dot find by name asynchronous called admin. And this one we need to wait for the result. And if my admin is equal to null, then I'm going to make a new one. Like that. This doesn't have, it's just that, okay? And in here, we want to have the username here is equal to admin. And my email is going to be webmaster@Allie.Chat. And then I want to do a var result is equal to user manager dot create asynchronous of my admin with a password here of like that. And then we'll do a result. And now if my result succeeds, or if it didn't succeed, then I want to throw a new exception here called result.errors.first.description. Otherwise, what I want to do is I want to do a result equals user manager.addClaims asynchronous. And we'll make a new list of claims like this. And I want to have a new claim with a JWT claim types of name. And we'll say it's Rob Engel. Okay. The next one is given name, family name, email verified, website, and of course role, which in our case is admin. So in base controller, it's this. And we want this one to be admin. My website here is https://www.allie.chat. The email verified is webmaster@allie.chat. Sorry, that's a true. Like that. And then if my result didn't succeed, then we're going to do throw a new exception here called a result.errors.first.description, and we'll do a console.writeLine admin created. Else, we're going to do a console.writeLine admin already exists. Okay. And then down here, we'll make this a new function called private static void ensure seed data of my configuration DB context called context. And then this is from a different identity server that I have, which is for each one of my clients and my identity sources and my APIs. We'll add all of them. And then up here, we want to do a ensure seed database, and we want to pass in my config context, which is this. Okay, that'll create my admin user and my role. And then the other thing I wanted to do was on my view where I log in, we want to remove this stuff which says about the default users. I think that's it. The next thing that I want to do is put Swagger on that. So we want to look up Swagger ASP.NET Core. And I'm going to install this package on the web API here called install package swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core. And then in my configure services, after add MVC before cores, we'll do a services.add Swagger generation of a new Swagger doc called version 1, and it's a new info of a title called Allie.Chat web API, and my version is version 1. And then I also want to have down here a app.use Swagger. And then I also want to have a app.use Swagger UI, which is a new Swagger endpoint at -Swagger v1 Swagger.json. And this is called Allie.Chat web API version 1. Now, I need to add in the capability to use a bearer token with it. I'm looking for my example of this. Hold on. It's this project. And it's right here. And I want to add in here a new c.add Swagger security definition called bearer. And it's a new API key scheme, which is a in called header. And then a description, which is a please enter JWT with bearer into field. And we'll call this a name of an authorization, and a type is equal to an API key. And then we want to do a c.add security requirement called a new dictionary of a string and an I enumerable of a string. And we want to pass in here a bearer with a enumerable.empty of my string. Looks good. Okay, just another second here. So I could add a new authorization type, but I already have that defined with the header here. So we'll just break there. And then under my multiple startup projects, hey there R4416, how are you doing? Welcome to the channel. What's a claim going to be used for? Asked Lion. A claim is used for security, to see if you have rights to execute that web API. Next time, I think it's a good time to go to bed at 5 a.m. Kill me. What's that Visual Studio mini map thing? This just shows a layout of the code. So we'll start the identity server and the web API. If I look at the API under debug, when it launches the browser, we want to go to http://localhost 5001 -swagger. And I'll give it an issue. Have I recently started doing streaming on Twitch? No, I've been doing this for a while. You can check out Discord and YouTube. Is it an extension? No, it's part of Visual Studio Pro. Now before I go any further, I want to grab my connection string here and bring that into my app settings here. This is called connection strings, right? And then we want to have a default connection, which is one of these. And I want to put this in PHS Allie.Chat. Oh, I'm a VS community plebe. Okay, we give it a run. I launch my Swagger. It's unhappy with me here because of the I don't think we need this Swagger endpoint defined. Okay, it's given me the same bug, so it's not here. It was from my app settings, which is there. Wait, what happened? All right, so we're close here. I want to first on the identity server, we want to not launch a browser. Okay. And let me see what I'm doing incorrectly here. Why is that stack overflowing? Let me just try this here. We can try it again. So now it's working. And here I can input my bearer token. Okay, so that's our web API all hooked up now. And we still have some stuff to add in here for the grabbing the token. So let me take a quick peek at that. I want to have on my base controller a new class here or a new method called protected asynchronous task called get application user. And we're going to pass back here an application user, which comes from the library entities. So this is an application user VM. And then here we should be able to just get our ID like that. And then the only other one in here that we want to have is a protected virtual log API called getLog, which will be a new log, and it's called a do you not have a log in here? You have an activity log, but it doesn't look like you have one of these log APIs in here. So we'll add in here a new class called a log API, which will be a base entity. And on it we want to have a endpoint type, which is called an endpoint type, and a integer called a response code, and a string called the IP address. And then we also want to have a prop string for my, GUID for my application user ID. and then also a prop for a application user, like that. And this one needs to have on it a collection of log API called logs API. And then we need to have one more, which is a log error. And this one is a string for my exception, a string for my IP address, and this is called a log error. So right here. Okay, we want to add those onto my application database context here. Which is called prop db set of a log error called log errors, and then another one called log API. Logs API, logs errors. Now in enums, we want to have something here called a public enum endpoint type. So now here we want to have a get log, which is my endpoint type called endpoint type and a player ID. And this is going to return a log API, which is going to be a application user ID equals player ID, which I'm going to change that to be called application user ID. My endpoint type is endpoint type. My IP address is my request.http context .connection.remote IP address .toString. Okay, we need to have a protected virtual asynchronous task of a log API called a write log API asynchronous, and it's going to have a status code called status code and a log API called a log. And you're going to go log.response code equals my int of my status code, log.timestamp equals date time .utc now, and then we do and I want to inject into here a application DB context called context. And then we'll have a application DB context called a context, which will be a context equals context. And this is a protected like that. So this is a context.logapis.add log, and then return await my service my context save changes asynchronous is greater than 0. Then we want to return my log. Otherwise, I want to return null. And we have one more, which is a protected virtual asynchronous task of a log error called write log error asynchronous, which will be an exception, EX, and a GUID for my application user ID. And in this we do a log error equals a new log error, where my exception is equal to exception.message. My application user ID is application user ID, and my IP address is request.http context.connection.remote-ip-address.toString. Then I do a context.log errors .add my log error, and then we await my if my await service .context .save change. Oops, this is just context .save changes asynchronous is greater than 0. Then you want to return log error, otherwise you want to return null. Okay, I think that's it for the base class. So in here what we want to do is I want to say var application user is equal to my context dot application users dot first or default asynchronous which is my ASP.NET user ID is my user ID. Now if my application user is equal to null, then I want to get the access token, which is the request.headers.first S, where my key is equal to authorization dot value dot split of the space of the first one. And then we get my discovery endpoint, which comes from identity model So in here, I want to say install package identity model. Okay, so there it is. And in this, I want to do a get asynchronous of my globals dot, and it's called my identity server URL. What's the fix for this? HTTPS identity model.readthedocs.io. It wants me to do this. So instead of using this client, it wants me to say a var disco is my await, and we want to say a using a var client equals a new HTTP client. And it's called get discovery document asynchronous of my globals.identity server URL. And then I want to get a user info client is my new user info client, my disco.userinfo endpoint. And it wants me to say that this is my can you do this as a await client dot get user info asynchronous from my user info request, which is a new user info request, which is my address equals my disco.userinfo endpoint, and my token is equal to my access token. And this is called response. And then I want to do a application user equals a new application user, which is a ASP.NET ID is equal to my user ID, which we're going to say as ASP.NET user ID. And my username well, we don't have that assigned in here. So we want to add in a new string here for the username. Which is here and here. And it's going to be the first claim where the type is preferred username dot value. And then we do a context dot players dot application users dot add my application user, and then we would do an await context dot save changes asynchronous. And then I want to return my application user. Now, we don't have claims assigned, but that's okay. I think we're good to go now. This needs to be a application user VM. So we don't want to include anything with this. We're just going to do a mapper.map of my application user VM of my application user. This thing needs to have in here a IMapper called mapper, which is a protected read-only IMapper called mapper. So now I need to add a new install package called AutoMapper. And then what I want to add is in my startup, we want to have a new protected void called start AutoMapper. And we want this to be a virtual. And it's going to return a I mapper. Who is that over there? Last one here, 2311. Thank you so much for that follow. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the chat. Let's go ahead and add this mapper here. And we're going to do a return new mapper configuration like that. And we do c.createMap from a application user to an application user DTO. And then same thing with a VM. And then you have an application user create request and an application user update request, and then a DTO to VM, and these can be reverse mapped. Looks good. Now we need to say a dot create mapper. And then up here where I'm adding my services, I want to say services.add transient of an IMapper called create automapper. Create. Like that. I'm a little confused as to why this won't add it as a transient. I guess it's a singleton. Yeah. There we go. And now we can go ahead and give everything a rebuild. And that's it. Now we can do a multiple startup project and start it up. And our web API starts up okay. And our identity server is running as well. And everything looks good. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to scaffold out our Angular CLI project. And then we're going to hook it up to OAuth. So I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in 10 minutes. When we get back here, that's what we'll be working on. Don't touch that dial. I'll see you guys in just a little bit.